Could the UK be facing a summer of shortages on our supermarket shelves?
Well, government officials have reportedly drafted plans for a reasonable worst-case scenario amid fears that the war in Iran will lead to shortages of carbon dioxide, which is critical to the food industry.
Well, it comes as the International Monetary Fund says that the Chancellor is raising taxes here in the UK at the fastest pace in the world.
Well, let's speak now to journalist Candice Holdsworth, who joins us in the studio. Morning to you, Candice. What are we expecting to see shortages of?
So this is quite interesting. This is a story that's been covered in all the major newspapers this morning. It's something called Exercise Turnstone. So government officials have been planning for worst-case scenario in which, in the Iran war, the Strait of Hormuz remains permanently closed, there's no deal, and we can't get vital CO2 supplies into the UK, which we need in various industries. I mean, it's used in food and pork. It's used in chicken and pork production to preserve food for longer. And actually, what's quite interesting is we had supply chain disruptions last year with CO2. So, I mean, Donald Trump's tariffs have introduced quite a lot of uncertainty into the supply chain. So, as a solution to these possible shortages, they've brought back online the Ensis bioethanol plant in Teesside. They actually agreed a deal with them last year to invest $100 million into the plant because it was due to close. But I think since COVID, there's been a lot of thinking in government that we need to onshore critical industries and we need to have the infrastructure, and you can't rely on global supply chains. So I find this fascinating. This is just getting more and more common since COVID, that government is involving itself in industry to ensure food security or energy security or even technology security.
Well, I mean, in a way, it's crazy not to. When you see that the Strait of Hormuz is one pretty small waterway. I mean, it's about the width of the English Channel, pretty much. And its closure cripples the globe. I mean, that's utterly crazy, isn't it?
Yes, and it's not just that as well. It's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait as well. So this is just outside Saudi Arabia. And there are fears that the Houthis could start firing missiles again. That could also disrupt these supply chains. I mean, we must take note. They're saying that this is worst-case scenario. You're not saying that this is likely to happen, but it could happen. And you don't want to be caught out by this kind of thing. I mean, I found it so fascinating during Biden's term in the US administration, where he designated things like computer chips as national security. I mean, this is increasingly the thinking now.
Yeah.
In terms of preparedness, though, there are three things that come to mind in terms of our security, and that is our energy, our food and our defence. And it won't be lost on people that it's those three things that the government so far has failed to invest in.
Well, I think so. I think that, well, there seemed to be a lot of pragmatism after the award. There was pragmatism amongst people like Rachel Reeves, some within the Labour movement, that actually we need to think very carefully about energy security, because I think a lot of criticism of things like exploring for more oil in the North Sea was that it wouldn't affect the price of energy because that's set globally. But really, one important thing is it's just security, just ensuring a steady supply of these things. We cannot always rely on international markets to do that. No,
and just briefly, the International Monetary Fund says we're raising taxes here faster than anybody else. I mean, why? Well,
so it's about 3 times more than France, which is very, very interesting. Even though France we think of as more of a highly taxed nation, you know, Rachel Reeves has avoided levying direct taxes on incomes, but she has not raised income tax thresholds, and we know with inflation, people are under increasing pressure. It's indirect taxes through things like property, which affects rents and mortgages. And we just know that financial resilience is very low. People just face huge housing costs, energy costs, food prices. Amongst younger generations, you've got things like student debt. So people just really can't take any extra pressure. Even just a slight raise in price on anything can tip people's budgets over the edge.
OK, Candice Holdsworth, thank you so much. You're back with us in the next hour.
It's worrying, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's true, though. People are already squeezed, aren't they?
With no headroom.
There is no headroom.
For us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's nothing more important than keeping your money and your identity safe online. And with so many VPN options available, choosing the right one can be pretty daunting. But this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN, is making the choice easier for GB News viewers. ExpressVPN is offering up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free. That's top-level security from just £2.49 a month, and you're covered by their 30-day money-back guarantee. So just click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code now. Remember, when you're online, you are often sharing personal data, so hackers can steal your information, your passwords, your photos, and your bank details in just seconds. But ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. So why choose ExpressVPN? Well, it couldn't be easier to use. With just one click, you are protected. And ExpressVPN uses military-grade AES 256 encryption, which is the same standard trusted by the US government to guard their classified information. With their new tiered plans, you can protect up to 14 devices at once and manage passwords securely. Live chat support is available 24/7, and it typically connects you in under a minute with a real person. Click the link in this video's description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off ExpressVPN, plus 4 months extra for free. Start protecting yourself today with ExpressVPN.
Delighted to say we're joined now by Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Peter Kyle. Morning to you, Mr. Kyle. Can I start by asking you about the front page of the Times this morning? Many people will be alarmed to see it. UK facing a summer of shortages on the shelves. This is due to a lack of CO2, due to the Strait of Hormuz being shut, concerns that Britain could face shortages of chicken, pork and other supermarket goods if that strait continues to be closed. What is the government going to do to try and avoid shortages on the shelves?
Well, thank you very much for asking about this. If you go back to the beginning of COVID, don't forget Boris Johnson missed those 5 Cobra meetings leading up to it. I can tell you that since the very, very beginning of this conflict, where there's been no such delay with this government, what you saw released there was a leak of contingency plans that we have been making since the very beginning of this conflict. Now, if we go back to 6 months ago when I was appointed to this job with Business and Trade, I decided to mothball a company in the northeast of England that nobody had ever heard of because it produced as its byproduct CO2. So I funded the mothballing of this company, and then in the first few days after the conflict began in the Middle East back in the beginning of March, I unmothballed it and I resumed production. And I can reassure people that as of this week, that facility is up to full production. We are producing CO2 to the degree where we can supply more than 50% of Britain's need should we have it. Now, if you go to the leak of the scenario planning that's on the front page of the Times, it is this scenario planning that has led me to make the sorts of decisions to build in resilience into our economy. So we are making preparations right through our economy for all different types of scenarios as we go forward. So we don't know the exact challenges that will flow from the Middle East because we don't know yet what the settlement will be and when the Straits of Hormuz opens, but we are understanding all the different circumstances that could happen, and we are making as many preparations as we can for as many different eventualities as we can. But just to reassure people, when it comes to CO2, we now have full production of the plant in Ensis that I mothballed back in September. That produces over 50% of the UK's requirements for CO2.
Yes, but in terms of building that resilience, I know one thing you're doing is cutting electricity bills for 10,000 manufacturers in the UK, and it's something called the BICS scheme, and that will be welcomed by a lot of people. But in your statement, you say when global instability puts businesses under pressure, we'll do what's needed to support them. But what about when the government puts businesses under pressure? Because we've had increase in national insurance, got the Workers' Rights Bill, which is problematic. We've got SMEs up and down the country really struggling under this additional pressure. And of course, that's come from the government, and there's no help from the government on that.
Well, if you link the two conversations that we've had so far, of course, I've had to act to mothball organisations and companies. I've had to, and that means investing in them. To invest in them, the government needs the money to invest. So we've had to raise money when we came into government because we inherited an economy that had zero growth but high tax. We were stuck in that vice-like grip, and of course we had that huge hole in our public spending that we had to fill. So investing in our public services, so waiting lists coming down, investing in our education services, so educational attainment is now improving. All of those key things we've had to invest in, we had to raise money for. But we have built in resilience into our economy. Going into this conflict that emerged into the Middle East with America's war in Iran, firstly, we decided not to engage in that war. We have focused on resilience in our economy, but going into that conflict, we had rising growth, lowering inflation, lowering interest rates, productivity rising. The fundamentals of our economy were all going in the right direction. So the resilience that is in our economy will stand us in good stead for the challenges that we may or may not face in the months ahead. But I have also been taking decisions as Business Secretary to build resilience in, but I have to just explain to your viewers that I'm having to act in a way that probably none of my predecessors have. Just to mothball and unmothball a facility that nobody really has heard of, producing a component that most people didn't realise the importance of, to do all of that in just 6 months shows how fast moving the global situation is and the challenges that an economy, an open, free trading economy like Britain faces in such global uncertainty. So to have a Prime Minister that is chairing COBRA, chairing Cabinet, chairing other Cabinet subcommittees where he personally is raising issues such as CO2 shows that we have got a grip on the challenges and we are acting in an assertive, ambitious, creative way to make sure that we have all the resilience that we need in different circumstances throughout the economy.
That Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is raising taxes at the fastest pace in the world, 3 times faster than France, which we would consider to be a high tax country. What happened to this government's promise not to increase taxes on working people? Because for people watching and listening today, they will feel like you are squeezing them until the pips squeak.
We did have to take some difficult decisions at the beginning of this government, and we acknowledge that. We still have a lower tax threshold than France. I mean, there's a big difference between overall threshold and, of course, it having to increase in order to invest. But if you look at all the fundamentals that I mentioned before, they're going in the right way. That's why Rachel expressed such frustration, and it's why I have such frustration that going into this conflict, all of the indicators for our economy are going in the right direction. And of course, it is the economic growth that we crave as a country, and we are determined to deliver as a government that is going to get us through this, because we cannot go on with low growth and high tax as a nation. We have to get growth into the economy so that we can, of course, ease the burdens and the frictions to trading in the UK. And of course, that's not just domestic, it is internationally, which is why we're striking so many trade deals with North Korea, with America, with the European Union.
With North
all
Korea.
of these deals are going to benefit hugely the UK. Sorry, did I say North Korea? South Korea. Forgive me. With South Korea, these are the sorts of deals that are going to fundamentally improve the fundamentals of our economy as we go forward and create opportunities. And I thank you for your correction.
Look, we're down to the last 30 seconds. But when you talk about building on resilience, energy, food, and defence, where you've addressed food, energy you don't seem to be doing anything about, and defence obviously is woeful at the moment.
Well, of course, no, on defence, we have signed 1,200 contracts since we came into government, defence contracts, building 13 new ships, new helicopters, new Typhoon jets, and of course, we have a strategic plan that we are working on fundamentally to refocus and in a very complicated global environment to make sure that Britain is able to play its part with its global partners and within NATO and make sure that we are safe and secure as a country. We are recovering after
Carl,
a decade
I'm afraid
of
we're out of time with you.
disinvestment in defence,
We're
getting
about
our
to hit the
country
end of
back
the
to
hour.
where it
Thank you so much for your time. We'll be back in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.